Good afternoon to everybody. I think, first of all, I'm going to explain that perhaps the title is not very meaningful because I don't come from the field of localization. I'm a computer science engineer, doctor in computer science. I work usually in fields related to computational logic, and a part of that, I'm the director of a cooperation group, and we are right now arriving to localization. When I say I change it, at the beginning I say tag translation, then I change by label translation, and in the morning when I was in the first talk of Thomas, that he said everything that should be translated in an application, the text, the user interface, the help, everything, so localization in general, this is what I mean. So I'm talking about socializing that process, so the topic of this conference, for obtaining real multilingual applications that I will explain what I mean by real. So I'm going to provide a talk very intuitive, because what I'm going to present it's not something that we have developed. It's something that we pretend to develop, not only us, many other people. It's a point of view, a position paper, a perspective, side of this field from our perspective that is different from the perspective of perhaps companies that we have seen, or even also academia, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is just provide an introduction in which field are we working, who we are, and what we do. Then I'm going to establish the motivation of this work, that of course is multilingual software, and then I'm going to talk about what we propose for this, just before finishing. Then I'm professor at the university. At the university, our roles, traditional roles, are teaching and researching, and they are still the roles that we have at the university. But traditionally, we have been oriented to Occidental talents, to prepare our students, to train them for working in our companies, in our market, afterwards with globalization, perhaps in an international market, and researching for solving the problems that appear in our society, local society. Indeed, it's very recent that universities Occidental universities have started to think about the situation, the problems, and the professional market in the 8% of the rest of the world. And this recent interest has developed something that is called University Cooperation for Development. That is the work in cooperation that is made from the universities. Indeed, there is a figure that has appeared in the universities, at least in many Spanish universities, that is called cooperation groups. Cooperation groups are groups of people, students and professors and external collaborators that are inside the university. They depend legally from the university, and they are alike to NGOs, non-governmental organizations, working in projects for cooperation for the development. But the difference with regular NGOs is that we have a very specific technical background. So we can develop projects because of our technical background that could be very difficult to achieve for regular NGOs. Then, for example, in my university we have cooperation groups in the different fields. So in architecture, we have in agriculture, and the cooperation group that I lead is TEDECO, that means Technology for the Development and the Cooperation, and it's in the field of computer science. Our goal is using the new technologies of the information and communication for improving the situation of educational, mainly educational, but not restricted, centers of developing countries. So our field is software development. Also we provide technical training, and consultancy, and we have all our activities integrated in our curriculum, in our study plan. So the traditional works that we prepare for our students are oriented to this kind of projects. Instead of sending students to a company, IBM or HP or whatever, to make the practices, there are some students that prefer perhaps going to Central Africa or South America or Asia or wherever, to a country that has a center with a problem that should be resolved by developing some software or thinking about a solution for whatever, and they develop their practices or their thesis, master thesis or PhD thesis. So, for example, we are a very recent group, because there are cooperation at the university since, I don't know, there has been at my university for many years, but in other fields, in agriculture, for example, even in architecture, but in computer science, we are the first group that has been created in my university, and we have started working in 2006. So till now, we have been working in Central Africa, mainly in Burundi and Ethiopia, in Congo and Burkina Faso. We have some other projects starting, and we are right now starting in South America, in Ecuador, with one project. So this is not for any reason, it's just that we work by demand. So the institutions that ask us for collaboration, for developing any project, any software or whatever, are the ones that in where we are working. We have many research lines with all these institutions, some of them related technical advice for hardware infrastructure, for example, designing cyber conditions, because it's something that in developing countries they are constructing a lot. Well, many other topics. Our specialty is software development for education. We have developed a lot of software for different purposes that is used in universities. Also, we have another research line related to natural language that is close to what I'm going to talk about here. We are developing automatically multilingual dictionaries for minority languages, and also some other interesting projects with other universities in Cameroon and also Senegal. Then all this software that we develop is free software. For us, as we are working in cooperation, there isn't any other possibility than using free software. If we see, I don't know the background of most of people, probably this is very obvious for most of you, but I have prepared a very intuitive presentation. The four freedoms that are the definition of free software are these. Free software, the characteristics of free software is that provide you the freedom of running the program for whatever you want, study the program, could see the code and change it, distribute it to help your neighbor, say textually, improving the program, and release your improvements for benefit of the community. Indeed, in the definition, we can see that this is very close to the goal of working in cooperation for development if you work in cooperation, right? We are talking about helping your neighbor, and we are talking about the benefits of the community, right? So from the university, that we are not working for profitable benefits. This is the kind of licenses that we use for all our software. So, in the development of free software, the main characteristics is the concept of community. Indeed, the concept of community is what we have been talking about here all the time during the first session, that it seems that the power of community for translating all together, because they are motivated, is something new. perhaps it's new for translation, but it's from the 80s in the development of software. This concept of a whole community working for obtaining something bigger with the collaboration of everyone. This is exactly what free software is doing from the 80s. And the way of developing software is putting projects in websites in forums, where we have the tools that are useful for collaborative work and distributed teams. That is the kind of things that used to develop free software. Then this implies two things. If many people from different places is going to collaborate developing software, they all should speak the same language. That is why for developing, the developers should share a language. The majority, the one that used the majority of the projects is English, but of course there are projects in different language, I guess in Chinese or whatever. Right? But this is the language of the developers for the code. Has nothing to do with the language that is used in the user interface, right? That is what we all are talking about during the whole conference, I guess. Then, what is the interest of this kind of projects? Multiple languages, of course, as much users as possible. So, this is why our goal is obtaining real multilingual software. One of the keys of good practices in software is reusability, right? Reusability. Even more in not profitable software. Because if you develop software for free, if you develop it from a non-governmental organization or you develop it from the university, if you are participating in cooperation for development projects, they aren't any interest in replicating code. In the commercial life is different because, for example, developers from Thailand or Russia could be interested in developing their own applications, even if there are other applications developed by other companies in Germany or France, right? It's one of the rules of the market. It could be good for business activities, but for this kind of activities is not good at all. So what we need is reuse, not replicating efforts. So the main problem that we have to face, and this is exactly what we are worried about it, because we are not worried about any profit, any interest related with money. We are interested in the generalization of software for everybody that could be interested in using it. So the main problem that we find is the minority languages. Of course, there are thousands of languages all over the world, but most of them are minority languages, because how many languages we know? Even today that we have been talking about social networks that some of the main companies have been able to achieve, how many was it of? 76, even 100? Okay, let's say in a couple of years 200. 200 is nothing compared with the thousands that are not translated. The millions of people that is not able to read a program because don't understand the language. So our interest is that for us it's a problem that many software applications are distancing millions of people from new technologies because they don't understand them, right? Then we have to think from our point of view, not from the cultural, social, educational. That is another problem. We are thinking from the technical stuff, what can we do to improve the situation? And we have realized that the neck of the bottle, the principal problem that make it difficult to translate things to many different languages is that the developers should be involved in the process of translation, right? And they should be involved in the maintenance of the applications that are translated to different languages. So, what is the consequence? That the applications are only available for the languages that are dominated by the developers. So can be 2, can be 3, can be 20 if the developers can count with help of translators, but are not a generalization. And the problem is that when we have software applications that have not continuous maintenance, it's impossible to include new languages because it entails changing the code. So if we look at the software market, this is not a problem for software market. This is something that is handled in a different way. For example, companies, of course, traditionally, they invest money in paying translators and interpreters to have the releases in the languages that are profitable, and it's perfect, right? Right now, in the first session, we have seen as big companies of social networks are easily creating communities to obtain in an exponential way translation to many other different languages, right? Apart from that, also we can see, we study the available tools for translation, that there are plenty of them. For example, for Symfony, we are using this, that is an interface to make life easier to developers. Then they can translate their text, the words of their interface to different languages. Also, this forge that is Launchpad is a forge of projects that include a section of translation. So if you put here your project, your software project, you can include this to make people that perhaps want to help you translate everything you provide about your application in different languages, and then provide you a status situation, the words that are the percentage that is translated, the percentage that is untranslated, the percentage that need to be reviewed. So there are some tools that are providing us facilities to make this kind of translation, but not the kind of translation that we could have, because this only can be made by the developers, right? So what is the main problem? If the companies are more or less mobilizing these social networks, the companies are paying the translation, the problem is, what about small software developments? What about this software? How can they go to a wide goal market of users? What happened with the software that is developed in cooperation for development, that has little or no money at all, and scarcely or no technical maintenance? That is the main problem. And the paradox is that is exactly this software the one that could be reused for thousands of communities with similar needs, and it should be the priority because it's the software that is needed to make people get closer to the new technologies, the people that cannot access the technology because they don't control the popular languages. So, what is our proposal with this situation? Well, we think that the main goal is designing a procedure for user interface translation, for localization in general, based on socialization. But for us, what is important is removing the intervention, the participation of developers. Just provide the software that assure that the system can work only with the intervention of users, right? In this situation is where we are going to see the potential of the community. It was the same with content management systems. At the beginning, any change in a web page should be introduced by the programmer, because he was the only one that knew HTML or whatever. Now we have software application that made any user be able to change the content of page. Why? Because we have the software that is supporting the changes without the technical intervention. This is what we think that should be done in the issue of localization, in the issue of translation to different languages in a software application. So the key is the automatization of new languages incorporation without the intervention of the developers. So the situation is that developers are going to participate in the project directly, the project is in the forge, and they are not going to have any relation with the users that are going to provide the translations. The users of the application that voluntarily decide to help with the translation are going to have a system with reviews and not so sophisticated as the one that has been presented for Twitter, for example, but this is going to be independent on the developers. The system should be prepared for the software of the project, be able to introduce the new languages as soon as they will be validated. Then, the roles that we are talking about are, apart from the technical developers, the engineers, the programmer, the translators that are users that decide to collaborate translating to their local languages, and we have introduced reviewers that are trustful translators that are going to help us to introduce some kind of quality in the translation, not so sophisticated as other ones, but the goal of this work is not the excellence, it's just the availability of something. It's a first step. Then, when all the words or the tags or the labels, everything for one language is translated, then it's automatically incorporated to the application, to the software application. So, the first step, the developers develop the platform. Then people, users, can declare that they would like to be translator in 1, 2, whatever languages that they know, and then they provide translation. The translations are reviewed by the reviewers and they can be rejected, so a new translation is provided, or they can be accepted. Then they are incorporated as okay for the system. When all of them are okay, then the language is incorporated to the project. Indeed, for example, this is just to represent in a graphical way. We have an application with an amount of things to translate in one language, for example, English. Then we start with other language, for example, Spanish. During one process, everything is translated and then reviewed. And finally, when everything is reviewed, we have the application in English and Spanish. More or less, it's like this. People start translate. We have all of things untranslated. Then people is translating. Then some reviewers are reviewing, translating words. Others are translating and translating words. And in a process, finally, everything is translated and reviewed. This is the end of the process for one language. Everything is in parallel. So we have an application in English, for example. In parallel, people is translating and reviewing in Spanish, translating and reviewing in Kirundi, the language of Burundi, translating and reviewing in German. And then in the timeline, we have here an application in English, here an application in English and Spanish, here an application English, Spanish and German, and here English, Spanish, German and Kirundi, without developers' intervention. So, the conclusions are that we think that the key for multilingual application is socialization of translations. When in the title I say real multilingual, I'm talking about, for us, real multilingual means any language, not only the commercial ones or the more popular. So the procedure should be the same for Catalan or Basque that are profitable than for Kirundi or Lingala or Oromo or Amharic that we are working in the countries where we have projects. Then the key is the socialization, of course. And this is very adequate for the this is very adequate for the system of free software application, because it's already introduced the concept of community, and it's only enlarged this concept also to the translation, and without making the translators be involved in any technical stuff. So the main problem that we found was the intervention of developers. So this is what we propose, the incorporation of new languages without developers' intervention, and we think that this is a great opportunity for minority languages, if they have the technical tools to be able to do this. For people that has no possibility to access ICTs in the past, could access thanks to this project-related cooperation for the development. So, from our group, for example, we are right now working in looking for extensions of regular technical languages that could provide us tools that are already developed that we could use to provide things to the developers related to be able to automatize the translations. Also, we plan to develop in the languages that if we don't find something previous that is already implemented, or improving it. And we pretend to introduce in the community of university cooperation for the development the idea about the priority of this socialization of translations for obtaining real multilingual software applications that should be, in our field, a priority. We plan to include this proposal in the software applications that we are already developing, that is the multilingual dictionaries and a project of cooperation tourism, and also another project that we have about loans, microcredits to students to be able to study in their local universities, and after introducing that, medium or long term, to be able to evaluate the impact, the successful or failure of all this process. So this is our plan, and as I've seen, this is just our perspective from our field, and I'm sure that as we are starting in this field of localization, probably some or many of you are used to work with tools that are already available in different languages to be able to implement this. So I will be around today and tomorrow. I will be glad if you tell us anything you think could be useful for us to implement this work. Thank you very much.